Welcome everyone to our February 11th, 2026 Apereo Micro Conference, one of our series of open discussions on openness. So on behalf of the Apereo board, I'd like to welcome you to our session today and thank you for attending. Just a quick intro about me. In addition to my position on the board, I also serve as the Sakai Community Manager, one of our Apereo projects. And I'm also the founder and principal consultant of Red Willow Solutions. And I hope you won't mind my shameless promotion here. If you are interested in any kind of consulting work, particularly in open source, because that's where a large part of my background is. I do contract work in instructional design, training, technical writing, UX research, project management, and online community management. So again, if you find that your team is stretched a bit and you need some additional help on a contract or staff augmentation basis, I hope that you will think of me and make a connection there. So now on to our Apereo communications. If you've not already signed up, I do encourage you to visit the Apereo website at www.apereo.org. And if you go down to the bottom in the footer, you should see a Join Apereo Communications link that lets you sign up for our newsletters so that you'll be alerted to things like this webinar today and other Apereo events. And you can join us in future events. So we'd also like to thank our microconference sponsors, JMA Consulting. They provide Civi CRM, which we use to register folks for the webinars. So you experienced that when you registered today. But it does a whole lot more. They actually did a microconference on that. So if you're interested to know what Civi CRM is capable of, you can look at our other web recordings on YouTube for the micro conferences in the past. Our platform sponsor today is Big Blue Button, which is the virtual platform that we're using right now. And again, we'd also like to thank our Apereo community, which is a collection of open source advocates working in higher education. So today's session is Building Bridges, Not Islands, a blueprint for open source innovation in education and emerging ecosystems. In this presentation, you'll learn about ways in which open source can bridge education, industry, and communities, particularly in emerging ecosystems where innovation flourishes despite limited resources. Our speaker today is Olawale Fabiyi, and he is the HEMIS Technical Advisor at the Gambia's Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science, and Technology, overseeing the World Bank funded digital transformation of the ministry's operations and the national higher education system. Olawale is also the founder of the Open Source Academy and Hack Weekend initiatives dedicated to expanding open source adoption and increasing societal challenges through technology. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to Olawale and he can take it from there. Oh, and by the way, as you have questions, please feel free to enter those into the chat. Olawale will answer them toward the end of the presentation, but we can go ahead and capture some of those in the chat as we go. And again, this session is being recorded.
All right, good day, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, because I believe we have participants from across the whole world. So I believe we are from different time zones. So thank you for being here. You could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be in this conversation. I'd like to first start by thanking Apereo Foundation, not just for the opportunity to speak, but for also believing in stories that need to be told. As already mentioned, my name is Olawale Fabiyi. Currently, I serve as the technical advisor for HEMIS. HEMIS is an acronym for Higher Education Management Information System, which is a digital transformation project at the Gambia's Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science, and Technology. But the story I'm about to tell, just like I mentioned in one of the promotional materials, I wanted to look like Netflix Nollywood style storytelling, so that we don't just slip off while I'm presenting. All right, so this story actually dates back to 2014. That was even before I tried to solve any problem. All right, so in 2014, I moved from Nigeria. After 2 years, I moved from Malaysia to Nigeria uh, in 2012. And in 2014, I moved to the Gambia to become the coordinator of the Computer Science and Technology Department at the American International University, West Africa, here in the Gambia. So we were doing everything right by the books. We're teaching SQL Server, we're teaching Oracle for databases, we're teaching .NET software fundamentals. So students were learning, they were passing exams. Then they would go for internships at local companies or firms, and the companies will call me, "Hey, Olawale, your students are good. We can see that they are very good, but then they cannot actually build with our stack. They can't build anything that is actually needed or meaningful for us." So it was not that they didn't know what they needed to do. They weren't learning the wrong things, but the fact was that they just weren't building real solutions to real problems. So there was a disconnect there, a gap between academic exercises and workplace reality. All right, but here's a stark reality, or the other reality. We have partnerships, academic partnerships with the likes of Oracle, Microsoft, ISA Squared, Cisco NetAcad. Some of them were free, while some of them required yearly licensing fees and costs. But looking at a new institution, the college was new then in 2014, we would not be able, because we're trying to run lean. It would be too expensive, because I can remember at that time we purchased Cisco Networking Academy equipment about $11,000. So I needed to limit the budget at that point. So for a new institution, we know even every dollar, every cent, every dollar adds up at the end of the day. And as you grow, those costs will keep growing. All right, so I made a decision, a stark one, that we're going open source. Not because we were in crisis, but because I could see the trajectory this would take. And I didn't also want to make the mistake I made. While I was in school, in the early 2000s, because my institution then back in Malaysia, we were only taught proprietary technologies. So for me, I looked down on open source technologies those days. So I didn't want to also, bring up that, let my students suffer the way I suffered, right? All right, so as the computer science department grew, proprietary licensing costs, of course, would also grow with us. More importantly, students needed to work on real projects with real stakeholders. That was one of the lessons we learned. And licensing barriers would definitely limit who we could partner with. So what I didn't also realize then was that this was not just about cost. It was more than cost management. It was about fundamentally rethinking how we prepare students for the real world at the end of the day. Because I could also remember while I was during my diploma in 2002, we were taught basic COBOL, Fortran, and it was only in the second year, which was the final year of the first group of diploma, that we actually did a bit of Java. So those days we were not taught what was required in the workplace. So when I got in, it was a mindset shift for us, right? So over the next 40 minutes thereabout, I'm going to walk you through 3 experiments that answer the questions many of you brought to this session. So this came from the promotional materials. So how do we connect students to real employment through open source? Secondly, what does sustainable community growth look like in resource constrained environments like I am? And then finally, how do we move from isolated projects to lasting ecosystems? But again, as I said, I'm not going to answer them in order, right? I'm going to show you how I learned through them, through failures, through pivots, and eventually a blueprint that works. Can you all hear me? Hello, am I
Yes,
still on?
we're hearing you. Yes, we're hearing you perfectly.
Okay, I want to be sure I'm not lost. All right, so let me give you the reality of building tech education in the Gambia. Right now, currently, population is about 2.5 million, which is one of Africa's smallest countries. Universities with serious computer science programs and education are about 3 to 4. Again, I'm putting emphasis on serious, 3 to 4. So software companies employing developers, again, serious developers or world-class developers. You can count them. Internet, very unreliable. In fact, I had to switch to my private dongle right now because the internet, I think I got disconnected at some point. So internet is very unreliable. And then power cuts, let's not go into that. This is actually the reality. This is the operating environment. So, but here's what we do have. We have a young population hungry for opportunities. 60% of the population are under 25, English-speaking West African time zone, which is very close to Europe. And then the government is willing to experiment with several other implementation programs as it has done. So several industries have real-world problems like fishing, agriculture, tourism, fintech. All these actually need solutions. But again, the budget might not be there, right? These are also intervention programs we did in the past years. I'm going to talk about that. Critically, a global open source community that doesn't charge by the border is available to us. All right, so the question now became, how do we build a tech ecosystem when we can't copy paste Silicon Valley? Why can't we copy paste Silicon Valley? We don't have the money that Silicon Valley has, right? So also you look at when your entire country's IT budget is less than one Silicon Valley's startup series A or B or C, right? So the answer wasn't in trying to become a cheaper version of MIT. It was in recognizing that open source isn't about free software, right? We have free software, we want to use free software, but it's more than just that. Open source is about participation. It's about visibility and global connection. It's about bridges, not islands. So for the educational technologists in this room, what you're about to see is open pedagogy implemented in one of the most resource-constrained environments you can imagine, right? Not as theory, but as survival. Because when you can't afford proprietary tools, and maybe your internet cuts mid-class, just like the internet cut off just before I started this presentation, then you have to actually figure out a solution by yourself. So today's conversation addresses 6 core questions that you brought to this session, as stated in the promotional material. So I'm going to answer them through stories, not checklists. So you please watch out for them as we go through the experiments. So I'll walk you through 3 experiments over 10 years between 2014 and 2024. Some of them succeeded, a lot of them failed. All taught me something very important, which I'm also going to show you. So, first move, I founded Open Source Academy, which became an affiliate of the Open Source Initiative. We switched from proprietary to open source tools across board. But then changing tools wasn't enough. Students still needed to work on real projects. If not, they finish, we teach them everything we need to teach them, and then they go and face a different reality in the workplace. So what did we do? Before that, I see people post on their status or even on their socials saying, "Oh, somebody needs blood. Somebody who has O positive needs blood at the hospital." And all. So I thought about it. Why not we make this the first project? So we partnered with Serekunda Hospital, which is one of Gambia's biggest public hospitals, to build a blood donor app. The real problem is that they needed better ways to connect donors with patients needing transfusions. Students work directly with hospital staff. They also learn how to translate medical requirements into technical requirements. So they started building something real. For the first time, students felt happy and all, working on something that could save people's lives. All right, so what actually worked was that there was real stakeholder engagement because we visited. I can still picture because I forgot I was going to bring the picture to show us the first meeting back then. I think we had the session with the hospital management board and all. So this was not a simulated classroom experiment or project. We were going to the industry, we went to the hospital. So students were motivated beyond just grades, even though grades mattered. You know, they had actual portfolio pieces for job applications, and the hospital was getting a solution they might not have budgeted for. Also, a lot didn't work. You know, a lot of things didn't work. So the project stalled. Why? Because exam periods hit. Students had other courses competing for attention. So when students graduated also, there was no one to maintain, you know, the work. So the hospital, of course, would need ongoing support we couldn't reliably provide. The app never got completed. The lesson was that real projects work, but it's impossible to layer them on top of traditional academic structure and expect sustainability. Students will always complain, oh, I have too many things to read, I have too many things to study for exams and all, and then we still have to do this project and all. So we needed a different model. So this experiment actually answers a question many academics will ask. How can universities better align academic learning with industry needs using open source? The answer is not too complex. It's quite simple. What you need to do is you need to partner with real stakeholders solving real problems. Every organization have issues and problems plaguing their operations. So what you need to do is partner with them, look at the problems, you know, you go through the planning and analysis, design and implementation stage to get this done. All right, so open source actually removed the licensing barrier that would have actually made this partnership impossible. But here's what I actually learned. You can't just bolt real projects onto traditional academic calendars and expect sustainability. The trimester system, the exam periods, the graduation cycles, they all work against continuity. So what did we do? We needed a different model. So the second experiment, again, like I said, the blood donor app taught me and everyone a lot of things. We needed to focus. We needed intensive interventions, not semester-long or trimester-long projects fighting against academic calendars. So that is when ARC Weekend came. So this is a bit of wordplay. So maybe you will be thinking ARC Weekend, W-E-E-K. No. So ARC is actually creative problem solving. And then weekend, W-E-A-K. Weekends are actually issues, problems plaguing industries or societies, right? Every society should have what? A strong goal. But then when there are issues and problems plaguing the society, then this is, instead of a strong goal, they have weekend. So we came up with this name, ARC Weekend, solve issues affecting society. So what we did with ARC Weekend, it was more than just a hackathon. It was a technology event that combined sector-focused conferences with industry experts, multi-day technical training in Python, cloud computing, and then solution building hackathon. And then, of course, there was real-world pitching to judges, and it involved every event we actually did add government backing with it. All right, so between 2018 and 2022, we ran several series that focused on fisheries that we worked with Ministry of Fisheries and Department of Fisheries, Ministry of Health. Then there was COVID-19 response, agriculture, and hospitality. So we had roughly over 500 participants across board, and this was EU funded and EU and ITC funded, international. So each event lasted about 3 days. So the wordplay of weekend done over a weekend, W-E-A-K-E-N-D, over a weekend. So 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So each event had about 100 to 150 participants, mix of students, professionals, and then we had real problems from real sectors. So with ARC Weekend, what actually worked was that there was intense focus, which meant that things actually got built during the weekend. But there's also a downside to that. I'll get to that. So sector-specific approach, which meant solutions were contextually relevant, and then government involvement gave it legitimacy. We created a community. In fact, I think right now we still have the group. We have the WhatsApp group, and then we still have the Facebook Messenger group where we have the community. So some actually became ventures. In fact, at this year or ending of last year, there was an agri-tech startup. It just started, and it was based on one of the events that was done. Another one was an AI chatbot that came during the COVID challenge, right? And then we had backing from Python Software Foundation and a lot of other international organizations. So with Arc Weekends, before that, so the promotional material, if I'm not mistaken, I think it also asks a question that says, what makes community-driven models like Arc Weekend successful? We have seen some things and are replicable elsewhere. So before you can talk about something being replicable, you have to learn the issues and problems so that you don't also make those mistakes. So for Arc Weekend, what didn't work, or what we realized that weekends aren't enough to build solutions. And then it's also not enough for serious skill development. Also, prize money created wrong incentives. Some, a lot of people came in competing just to win the money, not to actually build solutions. So several teams had good ideas, but no capacity to execute it at the end of the day. Some winners would just go steal, at the end of the day. I'll get into that, So, and also it's very hard to sustain any momentum after the event ended because everyone have their normal lives to go back to. So here's what I actually learned the hard way. So during, I think it was called the Agri-Act Challenge, which was the Agri-Tech hackathon, we realized that the winning team won $3,000, which was supposed to be a seed from ITC, International Trade Center, to actually, build an MVP for their solution. So they sent in invoices. If I'm not mistaken, they were paid about 70 to 80% of the money, and then they went ghost mode. We tried to reach out to them, but we later realized that there was no updates. We later realized that they were busy and then they had conflicting engagements. So another team won $100,000 at the restaurant event, and they asked when we asked them what they would do with the money, they asked if they could. They didn't ask. They said they were going to, share it amongst the team and then leave 20,000 to do marketing for the product. So the case was they had their own thing going and wouldn't just leave certainty for uncertainty. So some people could see prize money as survival income also, not just startup capital. So they couldn't just quit their day jobs. Some might not even have one. Others are students. So I had to face a hard truth. Weekend events create energy. They create awareness, right? They are great for community building. In fact, several of them will still see because like I said, Gambia is a very small country and very communal. So we still see ourselves and still talk about the events sometimes. So weekend events are great for community building, but they are terrible for training and almost useless for creating sustainable ventures. So here's the brutal truth about what sustainable contributor growth looks like in regions with limited resources or constrained environments. So it doesn't look like weekend hackathons with prize money. Prize money attracts people there for the money, not people ready to commit to build something. Again, like I said, you cannot blame them because they cannot leave certainty for uncertainty, right? All right, so for open source community managers and developers in this session, if you're trying to build contributor communities in emerging ecosystems, please learn from my expensive mistakes, right? Weekend events create energy. They create awareness because there's unlimited coffee, there's snacks, food. So we come to music, to have fun and all. They're excellent for community building and identifying motivated people, but they are terrible or very bad for training and almost useless for creating sustainable contributors. Events are your phase one. They are the pipeline. They are not the production line at all. You still need phase 2, which we'll talk about. So by 2022, I learned 2 critical things: that real projects with industry partners beat academic exercises. Again, I'm not saying that I'm from academia also, but I'm not saying that academic exercise, no. But then real projects, because the students are going to graduate and go into the workplace. So real projects, commits on GitHub and all, they are very important. I also learned that short events aren't enough. You need structured, long-form programs. So I think after that, when the ITC, International Trade Center, and World Bank funded a 12-month app developer program, which I actually managed, I had the chance to combine everything that I'd learned. The model is that recruitment is done through open applications plus rigorous selection, not just hackathon winners. For the first cohort, we had 25 participants. They had 6 months intensive training at a dedicated hub. And then the curriculum was co-created or co-designed with industry, right? So there were 8 competency units based on actual workplace needs and readiness. So the critical difference was the 6-month structured internship. We didn't tell them to go find internship on their own. We partnered directly with tech companies or tech solution companies that needed them to work with them. So companies were invested from day one because they helped also design the training. All right, so the program was built on 3 key pillars. These are very critical. A lot of times, we technical people, the only thing we learn is how to build technology, how to build software and all. But also very important is what? Soft skills, professional skills, soft skills, how to communicate, how to work in a team, workplace readiness, and all. And then finally, the very important one is having an entrepreneurial mindset. So having an entrepreneurial mindset would help you even as an employee to be able to solve problems, to be able to think like a business person. So you look at it. Why these 3 pillars, right? Because technical skills will get you through the door, right? But soft skills will keep you employed. An entrepreneurial mindset creates self-sufficiency, right? Which allows you to do what? Adapt and change your stuff. All right, so also the result of the app developer program was I was very successful, right? So the budget reality was that it costs about $20,000 for 25 people over 12 months. That's about $800 per person for a full year of training plus internship placement. So for context, if you look at corporate boot camps like Andela or ALX, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars per cohort. So we delivered employment outcome at 4% of their cost. It's noteworthy to let you know that all of them within 3 months of after the internship, they were able to secure jobs, right? So this model directly answers the question: how can open source meaningfully connect students to real world opportunities and employability? So it's not about teaching open source tools so students can use free software. No, like I said, open source is about what? Collaboration. It's about using open source as what? Foundation for complete transformation of how we prepare people for the workplace. All right, so here's what this actually means. For academics, when your curriculum is built on open source tools, students aren't just learning tools. They are building what? Public portfolios on GitHub and other repository that employers can actually see. So imagine a student gets into year 1 and then they start committing from year 1 into GitHub, year 1, year 2, year 3. By year 4, they have a full portfolio which employers can actually see and see what they've done over time. So every project becomes a resume item. Every contribution becomes proof of ability. So the transparency of open source makes student work visible in ways proprietary tools never could. So for developers and community managers, when we trained students on React, okay, so they were trained on React, React Native, and PostgreSQL. They are all open source. So we weren't creating a captive audience for our project, but we're creating a pipeline of people who understood collaboration. They understood documentation, version control, because we also taught them how to use Git, and then working in public and working with people. That is actually the foundation of good contributors. So also for educational technologies, the three-pillar approach, which are what? The technical skills, professional skills, and entrepreneurial mindsets, that's actually open pedagogy in action. It's learner-centered, it's applied, and it's measured by real-world outcomes, not just grades. So with ITC, what actually worked was that employment outcomes, right? Most of them found, like I mentioned, most of them found jobs within 3 months. There was industry buy-in from day one because the curricula was co-designed with the industry. There was structured internships with real support. The three-pillar approach, as mentioned, addressed the whole person. It doesn't just address technical skills, right? Not just coding skills. And we proved the model works. Also, with everything you gain, there's also something to look back and learn from. So this was grant dependent, which means it's ended. And for it to run, we need more grants on this. So also there was only about 25 people, so we couldn't scale it. And there was no permanent institutional home, and it required full-time management from me. But the model actually proves something critical. Employment-focused training with industry co-design delivers outcomes even in resource-constrained environments. So we just need to solve the institutional suitability piece, which brings us to the blueprint. All right, so we'll take 30 seconds or 15 seconds so that I just don't keep talking. We can maybe stretch, we can stretch a bit or drink some water. If you have your questions, you can drop them in the chat box. I think I've gone halfway right now. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we hear you. And we've got about 20 minutes remaining. So we're right on time. And as he mentioned, please feel free to enter any questions into the chat. We can take a few questions here.
All right. Welcome back to my Netflix Nollywood style presentation. I hope I've been able to, put you through the story all along. All right. So after 10 years, we had 5 Arc Weekend events. We had 3 training programs. In between, also, we had some, of course, funded programs, digital literacy programs, and all. So we had 600. We should have over 600 people trained. So if we look at this, what blueprint can we actually build from this, or what can we learn from this? So the blueprint is actually the 4-phase model, right? So looking at what worked, 4-phase model. So phase 1, community building and awareness, right? So the Arc Weekend model, whose purpose was pipeline, not production, like I mentioned. So it's sector focused, events bring students, industry, government all together. This actually helped us identify motivated talent. And then we'll be able to seize real world challenges, build legitimacy and relationship. This is not where serious training happens. This is where communities actually form. So in phase 2, structured skills development. So the ITC model, which is very rigorous, because if I'm not mistaken, we had over 200 applicants, if not more than, right? So this is, we also brought some of the hackathon winners in, but it was, the selection was very rigorous. Again, we had 6 months intensive program, internship in between, practical training. So not forgetting the 3 pillars, technical, professional, and entrepreneurial, and remembering that the curriculum was co-designed with employers too, and based on workplace competency standards, not academic theories alone. Of course, the use of open source tools saved costs and help for global connection. So phase three has to do with industry integration, the bridge, which is a 6 months structured internship. Students were matched with companies based on their competencies and all. So it was not self-sourced, right? So we knew what we wanted. So there was also monthly monitoring and support on both sides, the students, the employers, and all. So since companies invested their time in helping design the training and curricula, assessment was also done by both institutions. And also to mention, NACA, the National Accreditation Quality Assurance Agency in the Gambia, which is actually an arm of the Ministry of Higher Education, Research, Science and Technology, actually certified the program. So it was a win-win for us. All right, so in phase four, this is where the outcomes come. Outcomes and sustainability. So this is actually measured by employment, not just completion. They didn't just complete. Were they actually employed? And we're able to track career progression, not just the first job, right? Build reputation that attracts the next partners. So right now we have a working model that we can actually put on ground and then set the ball rolling for any other partner coming in. So transition towards self-sustaining model, maybe with time, student fees, corporate sponsorship. In fact, there was a time we wanted to build this industry weekend events whereby we bring in partners maybe from telecom or what other insurance, other industries, and then bring them in, and then we build solutions for them. That was going on earlier. It was an idea we had because earlier we were just focused on government sector. So this four-phase model actually answers perhaps the most important question that brought us to this session. So how do we move from isolated projects to lasting collaborative ecosystems? So the answer, you do not try to build everything yourself or all at once. Each phase serves a specific purpose and fits into the next. Like we saw for phase one events like App Weekend, they aren't failures because they didn't produce sustainable ventures. They are successful when they build community and identify motivated people. That's actually their job. And then for phase two, which has to do with the structured training, it isn't accessible to everyone, right? That's a limitation, but it should be accessible to the people identified in phase one. That's actually the bridge, right? And then phase three, which has to do with internships, they aren't just placements. They are where industry actually becomes invested because they co-designed, they co-created in phase two. That's the sustainability mechanism. And then finally, phase four, this isn't just about the outcomes, right? It's reputation that attracts the next round of partners and the next cohort, right, for funding for phase one. That's the cycle. So isolated projects try to do everything, all phases simultaneously, all at once, and they will definitely fail. Ecosystems build them sequentially, step by step, and create the momentum. All right, so the key principles that make this work. Principle one, so don't try to do everything at once. Events build community, programs build skills, internship builds careers, and then each phase builds into the next phase. For the second principle, industry has to be co-designer. They have to co-invest in it. If not, they will not see the value in it. They are not just the end users. They are not just coming to take the graduates or take the trainees. They should be co-designers in the curriculum and all. So they create the jobs, not just fill position. So for the last principle, not the last principle, principle three, I think there are about 5 of them. Principle three, open source acts as a foundation. This is more than just cost savings, right? It teaches collaboration because proprietary software, for example, somebody is building or an organization, a company is building, and then their source code is closed. But with open source, you have the source code posted on GitHub. In fact, a few days ago, there was the news of a friend of mine. He built an open source tool, and then one of my former students, is in Nigeria currently. One of my former students, who is completed schooling, is currently in South Africa. He's gone back to South Africa, and he saw me posted, and he was like, Mr. Wale, can I contribute to this project? I said, sure. And then I connected them. So that is what open source actually gets to do. So it helps students, it helps people contribute to real world projects. So GitHub becomes their portfolio. So for principle 4, the 3 pillars, let's not forget, not just code. We have technical skills, of course, and then we have the professional or soft skills, right? And then entrepreneurial mindset. Then finally, principle 5, we need to measure what matters. Not how many people we train, but how many people got employed. But even going further, after their first job, how many people still continued in their job or moved to better jobs? These are things we need to measure. All right, so now let me address what role educators, developers, and institutions can play in emerging open source communities, because this blueprint requires all 3 working together, not in silos or isolation. So talking about educators and institutions, your role is phase 1 and phase 2. You host the events that build community. You provide the infrastructure for structured training. You validate the curriculum. But you can't do this alone. You need industry to co-design, because remember, students are going to graduate and then move into the industry at the end of the day. So you need to co-design with industry. All right. So for developers and open source community managers, your role is mentorship and pathway creation, because you're already there. So you're creating a pathway for them. So you can't expect emerging communities to just figure out how to contribute to your projects. You need on-ramps, you need good documentation, you need to label your good first issues. So mentorship programs that work across time zones, right? So when you invest in making your projects accessible to new contributors from all across the world, you're not just doing charity, you're expanding your talent pool. So as another example, at my work at the Ministry of Higher Education, we did stakeholder consultations with different institutions, and we found out we had English-speaking institutions, Arabic-speaking institutions, and then we are also at French-focused institutions. So when after we did the stakeholder consultation and then we did the reporting, I came up with a dashboard, and I thought about it. So what about people that understand English, or those that only understand French? So I had to actually convert. I added language to it so people can see it in Arabic or in French. All right, so you might want to ask, we've been talking about open source. Why open source? So open source is not just about free software. I've entered it across my my presentation. Open source teaches collaboration. I've given us example of one of my prodigies posting his project, right? I posted it and then somebody saw it, so they can actually collaborate on it. So open source actually teaches collaboration, working with others, documentation and version control. It builds global connections. Your students aren't limited by geography. Students contribute to real world projects and build public portfolios on GitHub, that employers can actually see. It's actually a philosophy of inclusion, not just a set of tools. All right, so for the Apereo community, starting with academics, you don't need massive budgets to create industry relevance. All you need to do is what? Focus on a sector, co-design with the industry. You work on real projects with real stakeholders. You use open source tools to help connect you globally. And then not forgetting, again, I keep talking about the 3-pillar approach, because a lot of technical people or CS programs don't actually teach soft skills enough and having the entrepreneurial mindset. All right, so for open source developers and community managers, so the talent in Africa and across the global South is actually real. It's huge, right? The motivation also exists, but we need bridges, right? So I'm currently working on a new project which I'll be talking about maybe much later. Please join the Apereo community so that you can actually get to see this. So I was talking about in Africa there are several unicorns. Unicorn are billion dollar organizations, companies, or firms, right? So there have been organizations, Africans have actually built billion-dollar companies, million-dollar software companies. So if they can do this for proprietary software, they can also do it for open source software. So the talent is massive. So the motivation exists, but we need bridges. We need bridges, for example, to have mentorship across borders, projects that welcome new contributors, pathways into global communities, and Apereo is doing a very good job in that. We also need to look at recognition that innovation can happen anywhere, not just in Silicon Valley. All right, so for educational technologies, the pedagogy works anywhere. Make it project-based, not theory first. Make it industry-aligned, not academic only. You have structured support, not sink or swim, right? And as always, you need to make open source your foundation because it helps everybody actually collaborate. So the tools might differ by context, but then the principles are transferable. All right, so let me bring this to full circle. So 10 years ago, companies called to tell me my student couldn't do real work, not because they were not good enough, but because we were not private to what is required in the workplace. So today, those same companies are hiring graduates from programs we co-design together. So 10 years ago, we were managing software licensing costs carefully. Today, we are training people on open source tools that connect them to global communities. For example, for databases, we're using SQL Server, and Oracle, even though Oracle came with free license, and we moved to MariaDB, which is a fork of MySQL. And then we use ADSQL as an interface to run MariaDB. So it's open source, anyone can download and use. So again, 10 years ago, we were running isolated projects that stalled when students graduated. Today, we have a blueprint that moves from community events to structured training to industry integration, to measurable outcomes. So the 6 questions brought to this session about employability, sustainability, alignment, replicable models, ecosystem building, and roles. They don't have simple answers. They have sequential answers, faces, not just silver bullets. So the future of technology education anywhere, not just in Africa, will be built on open source. Again, I've been private to a lot of work. Apereo Foundation is doing, since they are more focused on higher ed. So I'm happy at the work they are doing and all. So again, not because open source is free, but because it's inclusive, because it is collaborative, because it teaches people to work in public, to document their thinking, to contribute to something bigger than themselves. For example, let's look at the Linux or Linux kernel, right? Linux is used, even our Android phone uses, some form of Linux in it, right? Abstracted, of course, so it would always, whatever you build, if it's open, if it's viable, it would always outlive you at the end of the day. So by making open source not just a tool choice, but a philosophy of how we connect education, industry, and opportunity, we are proving that communities anywhere can build their own tech ecosystems by focusing on bridges, not islands. Thank you. All right, so I'm happy to take questions. Thank you for listening to. I'd also be speaking at scale in March and OCX in April. So if you'd like to continue this conversation, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Olawale. You do actually have a couple of questions in the chat. If you want me to read those off for the recording, I'm happy to do that.
In the chat.
Yes. The first one is from Jay. I work in the community college setting and adult education certificate programs. Do you partner with smaller educational groups, and how do you leverage that?
All right, thank you, Jay. So basically, again, we have talked about open source being what? The foundation. And this is something we should leverage with. So as much as possible, when we build projects, we're bringing, it's supposed to be inclusive, right? You can partner with as much people as you want, right? But it doesn't have to just be you building stuff alone. So you can actually, it doesn't actually matter. You can partner with anybody, you can partner with smaller educational groups. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it's about having that base, having that foundation of open source, helping you collaborate, document, and all. I hope that answers your questions. Your question, sorry.
Thank you. And we also have one from Michelle. Have you tracked the number of students who remain involved in open source projects after graduating and moving into the workplace? And what's the longevity of student and mentor relationships beyond the academy?
All right, thank you very much. If you remember part of my presentation, one of the reasons why the Open Source Academy didn't actually work out well was because students graduate. When they graduate, they want to get to work, they want to make money. At the end of the day, I have not been tracking, but a few of them still work in open source because I still see them post projects and all. But we have, in reality, we have actually not been monitoring if they've continued in open source or not.
Okay, we are actually almost at the top of the hour. We have about 1 minute left. Are there any other questions for our speaker before we close?
I think Jay is saying they use Module and CVCRM, but no larger.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dave. Thank you.
Okay. I don't see any new questions, and we are just about out of time. But I would like to thank you so much for your presentation. It was extremely informative, and I really appreciated the narrative approach to it. It always helps to have things in a story for me because I kind of get sucked into the narrative. So, I appreciated the way you presented that. And I also thought that the phased approach is really ingenious because, if you look at things at just one phase in isolation, it might look like it wasn't successful. But when you use it as a learning opportunity and it feeds into the next phase, it really was building your success in the end. So that's, I think, a great way to look at it, and a great way to inspire folks to follow your phased approach and to implement similar programs in their own institutions. So thank you so much. And I understand that you guys will be at Scale and OCX soon. So if anyone else on the call is attending, please stop by and say hello to Olawale and to the Apereo folks attending those events. Again, this session has been recorded. It will be posted up on YouTube. So please feel free to share the link with your colleagues who may not have been able to attend today. And we hope you will join us for our next month's session, another micro conference from Apereo. So thank you everyone so much, and have a great rest of your day.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, the Apereo team. Thank you, all listeners. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.